A couple of very special guests with us, Mr. Karl Rove, who served in the Bush administration as the Deputy Chief of Staff, and Mr. Andrew Roberts, who is the world's leading authority on Churchill.
Because you're really here to hear the man who knows about Winston Churchill. I worked in a place for 7 years that had echoes of Winston Churchill, the White House. Anyway, you're here today actually to hear Andrew Roberts, who you'll find is a fascinating fellow. I hope you have some good questions, because he's got an answer. Historians have to be detectives to search out material to understand what actually happened. They have to be judges because they get material from different sources, and some of it is complete, some of it is incomplete, some of it is right, some of it is wrong. They've got to be interpreters because they've got to take all those streams of information and collect them and analyze them and organize them for us. And they have to be great storytellers. And one of the best storytellers I've ever read is sitting here right now, and he's going to speak to you. Andrew Roberts, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honour to be invited to. It's a great honour to be invited to address you today, and thank you very much indeed, Karl, for those, and indeed Gabe, for those very kind words. I'd like to take you back to the evening of the 10th, Friday the 10th of May, 1940, the day on which Winston Churchill was made Prime Minister by King George VI. And earlier that same day, at dawn, Adolf Hitler had unleashed blitzkrieg across the West. He'd invaded Holland and Luxembourg and Belgium, and had invaded all of these countries. He'd previously, of course, invaded, the previous month he'd invaded Denmark and Norway, and before that he invaded Poland in September 1939. So it very much felt as if there was an unstoppable German force that was fighting its way across the continent and was now going to threaten the West. And indeed, within 6 weeks, it managed to destroy France and force France into a humiliating armistice. But on the day that this great attack started, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister, and he later wrote in past life had been but a preparation for this hour and for this trial. And what I like to try to do today with you, who have the honour of going to a school that bears his name, is to look into the way in which it was true that all of his past life had been but a preparation for this hour and this trial. Because it was when he was your age that he started that preparation. He went out of his way to make himself into a great person. He was not somebody who allowed life to happen to him. He went out and grabbed it. He, again and again, came very close to death in his life, and as a result, he believed that he was specially marked out. This walking with destiny idea that he mentioned was an integral part of his personality. He very nearly died when he was born 2 months premature, which of course in those days could be extremely dangerous in 1874, at the time of his birth. He was stabbed at the age of 10 by a school friend in the stomach with a knife, obviously not a very close friend. He then was very nearly died of pneumonia at the age of 11. He was nearly drowned in Lake Geneva, and appalling, so close to dying. He and his brother went out on the lake, in the middle of Lake Geneva, in a sailboat, and very stupidly, they both dived off to swim in the lake, and the sailboat, having put the sail down, and the sailboat started to move away from them, and they didn't realise it until it was almost too late, and his younger brother at no point realised what was happening, but Winston Churchill did. So he swam after the sailboat, and the closer he got, the further the sailboat went away. And if he hadn't managed to catch a rope that was hanging from the back of it, they would undoubtedly both have drowned. And he said on that occasion that he had seen the yellow glint of death come as close to him as ever it had before. He was nearly killed in a house fire when the house that he was staying in, suddenly half of it caught fire because somebody hadn't put the fire rail in front of the big open fire. And he only narrowly managed to survive that. He was then run over in New York on 5th Avenue and 76th Street because he was English. He looked in the wrong direction and didn't see the car coming from the other direction, and spent 3 weeks in hospital there. And there's a huge gash down the centre of his forehead. In fact, if I could just borrow this bit, you can see in the great famous photograph made by Yusuf Karsh, you can see this great cut down the centre of his forehead. And that was taken 11 years later. And they said that in meetings you could actually, when he lost his temper, when Churchill got angry, the cut down the middle of his forehead would go bright red. He was involved in 2 other plane crashes, 3 car crashes. He took part in the last great cavalry charge of the British Empire, where he was on his horse when 3 dervishes came from behind him. The Sudanese tribesmen came behind him with their scimitar swords and tried to hack the legs of his horse, the hamstrings of his horse off, and he managed to survive that. The next year, an armoured train that he was travelling on was attacked by the Boers in the South African campaign, and even though 34% of his unit was killed or wounded on that occasion, he managed to fight back, but was eventually captured, sent to a prisoner of war camp, and then 2 months after that, he escaped from the prisoner of war camp and crossed 300 miles of enemy territory. At one point, he had to hide down a mine, and when the candle gave out, he had rats climbing over his face while he was down the bottom of that mine for many hours. And then a vulture followed him when he got out of the mine, and was hoping, of course, that he wasn't going to be able to find any food, but he did, and he got back. He went no fewer than 30 times into no man's land, and got so close to the German trenches that they could actually hear him, that he could hear them speaking. He didn't need to do this because he was Lieutenant Colonel. He could have stayed back at battalion headquarters. But because he wanted to see and share the dangers of his soldiers, the people in his battalion, 700 men who he was in charge of, and he did do that. And the result of all these close brushes with death was that he felt, he said, as if there were invisible wings beating above him, taking care of him, and ensuring that one day he would be able to do what he had predicted when he was only a 16-year-old schoolboy. And that was, as he told his best friend, that there were going to be terrible upheavals and appalling struggles in his life, but that he was going to be called upon when the nation was in danger to save London and to save England. And although people laughed at him when he was 16 and said these things, actually, of course, exactly half a century later, precisely all of that came to pass. And what he did as a result, what came to him as a result of this sense of his own personal destiny, was that he kept his marvellous calmness under the most extraordinary pressures, the greatest perils that have ever been, my country have ever been subjected to, the constant daily fear of invasion from really June 1940 all the way through to the point when Adolf Hitler unleashed Blitzkrieg on the east and went into Russia in June 1941. He sent over 3 million men in 160 divisions into Russia. In one of the confidence motions, he was being attacked on how terrible the A-22 tank was, which was admittedly a completely useless tank. And He said in the House of Commons, when the defects and the teething troubles of the A-22 tank became apparent to all, it was appropriately rechristened the Churchill. And the way in which he appreciated, what made that a good joke is because he said appropriately, because he understood that he himself had terrible teething troubles and defects. He had himself got so many things wrong in his life. He had got the abdication crisis wrong, he had got the gold standard wrong, he had got the women's suffrage wrong, he had got Indian independence wrong, he had got the Dardanelles catastrophe that took place in the First World War when 147,000 people, as Allied soldiers, were killed or wounded in a campaign that he was primarily responsible for. And yet, in each of these occasions, he learned something. He was a politician who was able to learn on the job. And in the Second World War, for example, the thing he learned from the Dardanelles campaign was that he never overruled the chiefs of staff in the Second World War, even though he had all the power to do so if he wanted to. So this is a person who, as well as making mistakes, and he once wrote to his wife from the trenches of the First World War, saying, "I should have made nothing if I had not made mistakes." It's a redemptive story, really, of the story of Winston Churchill, that yes, he made mistakes, especially when he was a young man, but he learned from them. And you then find that he was somebody who deliberately, as I said earlier, deliberately went out to be a great man. Partly this was because his family had very little money, or at least in relative terms. His father was an aristocrat, but because of what they call primogeniture in England, where all the money went to the eldest son, his father was the younger son, Lord Randolph Churchill, and he had very little money, and any money he did have, he was a terrible spendthrift, and he wasted it. So Winston Churchill grew up relatively poor, and yet and this drove him to be a great writer. He wrote 37 books, 890 articles, and the impetus for this, really, was not just that he wanted to express himself in the best possible way, but because he needed to pay the bills, not least because he had an extremely expensive lifestyle that meant that in the 1930s he had 14 servants, he only ever wore clothes with silk next to his skin, and he drank a huge amount of alcohol. This meant not so much that he became an alcoholic. I think it's very important to point out. He was always able to say rightly that alcohol was his servant and never his master. But what it did mean was that he honed what he called that noble thing, the English sentence, into a series of phrases which in the Second World War he sent into battle. And he turned out to be somebody who was capable, like Shakespeare or Dickens, of making phrases that will live as long as our tongue survives. And the eloquence that he was able to use in bringing the British people together and committing them to the cause was needed never more so than in June of 1940. Because by that point, the Germans had flung the British and the Allied forces off the continent of Europe. 250,000 British troops had been forced to evacuate from Dunkirk in an incredibly dangerous operation that if one small rickety bridge had been hit by the Luftwaffe, would have been impossible to have taken the men off the beaches. And as it was, they had to come off without any tanks, without any heavy artillery, without anything other than the rifles that they were carrying. So it was therefore impossible for a major British offensive to take place after that. And it was impossible therefore to see how on earth the British were going to be able to be on the winning side of the Second World War. Yes, they were able to bomb Germany. Yes, their Royal Navy meant that it was unlikely that they would be able to be defeated in the British Isles themselves. But how on earth, with America not in the war and until June 1941 with the Russians not in the war, indeed the Russians actually being allied to Hitler. How on earth could one carry on to the fight? And so in May 1940 and the latter part of May 1940, the Foreign Secretary, Lord Halifax, came up with a plan to make peace with Hitler, or at least to open peace negotiations with Hitler. And once, if that had happened, the sheer demoralisation, and it got out, and of course it would have been in the Germans' interest that it did get out, the sheer total demoralisation of Britain would have been such that it would have been next to impossible to continue with the war anyhow. And Winston Churchill was the key figure who said again and again in 8 cabinet meetings over 5 days that he was not going to allow this to happen. In fact, he called on the last of the days a group of the wider cabinet, beyond the war cabinet, about 20 people or so, into the cabinet room, and he gave a speech in which he said that he believed that he would prefer to fight and die in Downing Street sooner than make peace with what he called that man. And he said that we should be ready to die in our own blood here in Whitehall. And the cabinet, there was a quiet moment for a second, and then all of the cabinet got up and went around and clapped him on the back and shook his hand and agreed that that's what was going to happen. And there was no vainglory about this. There was no showing off or boasting about this. He had seen men die in battle in 5 campaigns on 4 continents. He and pretty much every member of that cabinet had fought in the First World War, so they'd seen men die in battle as well. Several of them, like Anthony Eden and Harold Macmillan, had won military crosses for bravery in that war. So this was not something that was just rhetoric. It was actually a cool, calm decision made by the cabinet that they would sooner all die than allow Adolf Hitler to have peace with Britain. And what it did mean, therefore, was that strategically, when Hitler invaded Russia, with this enormous attack on Russia, the biggest invasion in the history of mankind, behind him was the United Kingdom, which could be used, especially after the Americans came into the war in December 1941, as an unsinkable aircraft carrier that would allow the German cities to be bombed and the German increase in war production material to be stopped. And this was not the production, but the increase in the rate of production was entirely stopped by the combined bomber offensive. And so what you had, therefore, was, especially by the time, of course, that the United States was ready with Britain to cross over into the continent of Europe in D-Day in June 1944, was a capacity of fighting back which allowed us then to actually land on European soil. There had been already a lot of fighting, of course, in North Africa. At Operation Torch in November 1942, 250,000 Britons and Americans landed in North Africa. And also in the July of 1943, they moved into Sicily and then onto mainland Italy to fight their way up Italy. So by the time that Rome fell on the 5th of June 1944, we were ready for the following day to undertake the attack across the Channel. And all of these decisions about where to attack and when to attack and under what circumstances to attack were taken as a result of hard-fought arguments between Winston Churchill, President Franklin Roosevelt, General George Marshall, and General Sir Alan Brooke, the leader of the British Army, indeed British Armed Forces. He was chief of the Imperial General Staff. And sometimes these would get tough, these arguments. And of course they were, because there were tens of thousands of men whose lives were at stake as a result of the decisions that were being taken. And you would have George Marshall banging his hand down on the table. And at times these arguments got so violent and, well, not physically violent, but sort of aggressive, that they had to clear out all of the other people, apart from the chiefs of staff, in the room in order to get the decisions made in a quieter and calmer atmosphere. And so you have, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, somebody who, together with the Americans and the soldiers and the politicians coming together, the Americans and the British coming together, and finally working out a plan of victory. But you also have to remember that during this whole process, the power of the United States was growing inexorably vis-à-vis the British Empire and Commonwealth. In the extraordinary statistic that in the calendar year 1944, when Britain produced 28,000 warplanes and the Russians and Germans produced 40,000 warplanes each, the United States produced 98,000 warplanes, almost as much as the rest of the world put together. So of course ultimately it would be the Americans' decision who was going to command this great attack across the Channel. And what had also happened by then was that there were three major factors that meant that we were ready by June 1944 to do this. The first was that the Battle of the Atlantic had been won by the late summer of 1943. And this was only possible, it very nearly was not the case, because a fourth rotor was added to the Enigma decrypting machine, which hitherto had been broken by the Allies. And when the Germans added the fourth rotor in January 1942, it meant that everything was turned into gobbledygook. Nobody could, from that moment on, read any of the German codes. And so the sinkings in the Atlantic went up because the U-boats weren't able to, we weren't able to work out where the U-boats' wolf packs were. That was the first thing, but finally it was all right by the time we broke back into the code in December 1942. The next thing was control of the air. On the day of D-Day, when the Allies when the Germans actually managed to fly 168 sorties over the beaches of Normandy, the Allies flew 13,168. So it was a huge total air superiority that by that stage had been won by the Allies, largely due to the American P-51 Mustang. And then lastly, you also had the Mulberry Harbours, these huge, great floating 60-block long concrete blocks that created a false artificial harbour for the Allies to use, and also the pipeline under the ocean called Pluto, which brought 13 million gallons of fuel to fuel the tanks and the trucks when they managed to get ashore. And so by this stage, you had the capacity to undertake this great, the largest seaborne, the largest amphibious attack in the history of mankind on the 6th of June 1944. As I say, this comes as a result of hard-fought battles, but good-natured battles in a way, because they were undertaken by people who liked and trusted one another. The complete opposite was taking place in the Wolfschanze, Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia, miles behind the front line, where Hitler would listen to all of his senior generals, all of whom knew much, much more about grand strategy than he did. People like Gerd von Rundstedt and Erwin Rommel and Heinz Guderian. He would listen to them for hours and hours, and then at the end of the meeting would go back to doing what he originally wanted to do in the first place. And he was unable, and because he was a totalitarian dictator with a history of imprisoning and executing his enemies, his generals didn't disagree with him. Whereas in the British and the American councils of war, they were able to have an open, interactive discussion, which therefore created, through tension, no doubt, but creative tension, created the strategy that eventually won the war. And so what you find, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, is this fascination with war. There's no doubt about it, one can't get away from it. It didn't mean that he was a warmonger, but he was fascinated by war. His ability to learn from his mistakes, his great eloquence and command of the English language, his tremendous physical courage and enormous moral courage in standing up against Hitler before the Second World War, in which he was shouted down in the House of Commons, he was ridiculed by his enemies, people endlessly denounced him for being a warmonger and so on. He was nearly deselected from his seat in Parliament, and he did not change his message one iota. He continued to say what he believed, regardless of all the criticism that was sent his way. And so therefore you had somebody who, by the end of this, was able to not just save London and save his country, but also was able to help with the Americans save civilization itself. Thank you very much indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got plenty of time, therefore, for questions. It really is fantastic to make a speech about Winston Churchill in front of the Winston Churchill High School. I can't tell you what a thrill that gives me. Any questions? Sir?
So, sir, you mentioned before that with the Allies, especially with Churchill's military brass and all that, that there was a sense of open communication and all that. If there wasn't much of a open communication with his brass, would it be possible for them to lose the war? Or would it be more likely for them to lose the war if there wasn't much open communication?
Yes, that's a good question. I think that we wouldn't necessarily have lost the war, but it could have taken an awful lot longer to have won it. The way in which we had this, when I say open communication, of course it was very much behind closed doors. Nobody outside the inner circles could know anything at all. And one of the things actually which you saw was the way in which, however nerve-wracked the key figures were about the future, in public they gave off the certainty of victory. So you would have Lord Alan Brooke, who I mentioned earlier, the Field Marshal, writing to his wife and saying that he thought there was a very good chance that D-Day would be a disaster. Or you would have Winston Churchill telling his wife that the night before D-Day that he feared that there would be 10,000 bodies covered in their own blood, washed up against the shores of Normandy, so washed up on the beaches of Normandy. And also Franklin Roosevelt and George Marshall had private doubts about various attacks that were going to take place. But in public, when they talked to the press, when they talked to the public, when they talked to Congress and their own staffs, they always showed complete certainty and ultimate victory, which I think is the very quintessence of leadership. So, question there, Madam.
Sir, what began your fascination with?
My fascination with Winston Churchill, I'm afraid, is a bit ludicrous. Because it started when I was 5 years old and I was under the impression that my enormously fat cigar-smoking grandfather was Winston Churchill. And so I was very disappointed at the age of 7 when I discovered that actually he was Douglas Roberts. Since then, however, I've continued this fascination with the man who wasn't my grandfather. Because he was just such an important figure in British history. In the history, I was 2 years old when he died, and so when I grew up, people were always talking about him. And after I left university, I tried to become an investment banker, and I discovered fairly soon on that I was functionally inebriate, and therefore it wasn't a terribly sensible way of me to try to make a living. And so I started to write history books, and the first one I did was of Winston Churchill's, one of Winston Churchill's foreign secretaries. And so I was able to interview lots and lots of people, over 100 people who worked with Winston Churchill. They were all in their old age, and very often they'd forgotten what they'd had for breakfast. But boy, they remembered what it was like working for Winston Churchill. And so really from that moment on, that was 30 years ago, I've been writing books, 4 or 5 of them now with him in the title or the subtitle. But having written this one, I think I'm going to be allowed off for quite a long time. Madam. Yes, that's a good question. It was about what was it like for his family to have him as their father. He himself, it's very difficult, very difficult to have a famous father. He himself had a famous a father who actually took very little notice of him and who rather despised him, Lord Randolph Churchill. But he loved his own children, but they found it very difficult as well. He had 5 children. One died very young of septicemia when she was, I think it was 7 years old, which was heartbreaking for Winston Churchill and his wife Clementine. 2 of the others became alcoholics, and 1 committed suicide. So it's a very unhappy story. They were good parents, but the sheer pressure on all of them to perform. Having said that, their other child, Mary Soames, his youngest daughter, had a very happy and loving relationship with his father, a very successful life indeed, and was a wonderful woman. And she told me, I knew her quite well, she told me that one should never pretend to know what Papa would have thought after his death, because very often, like at the moment we're dealing, of course, with Brexit, and people are constantly asking, what would Winston Churchill said about Brexit? Well, he died half a century before the referendum, so we simply can't be certain what he would have said. And anybody who therefore tries to use Winston Churchill and the enormous canon of Churchill's work, he wrote, as I say, 37 books, but he gave speeches that cover 8,000 pages, the collected works of Winston Churchill. And so you can find a lot in there to really justify pretty much anything. It's a bit like the Bible, there's always something that can justify. Therefore, you really should be very careful when you claim that Winston Churchill's on your side. Gentlemen.
So Churchill's famous for being the prime minister and winning the war, but what did he do after that, when the war was over?
Well, after the war was over, actually, before the war against Japan was over, but after Hitler had committed suicide and the Allies had won in the West, he was thrown out of power in a general election on the 26th of July 1945. And this came as a terrible shock to him because he'd been going up and down the country making speeches and people had flocked to any of his speeches because he was such a iconic figure. But, of course, in the British system, the parliamentary system, he was only on the ballot in 1 constituency, whereas in your presidential system, he would have won that election. And so he was leader of the opposition for 6 years. But it was a good thing that he lost. Ultimately, even he realised that, because he was completely exhausted. And then he came back, and he was Prime Minister, again, in the peacetime, between 1951 and 55, for until he was in his 80s. So, and then he died at the age of 90. A man who drank a great deal, took very little exercise, smoked 160,000 cigars in his life, and lived to be 90. I'm sure that that's a really bad example to give you, young people, but nonetheless.
Can I have a follow-up on that?
Yes, of course.
No, but given the fact he was such a successful wartime leader, then transitioned to peacetime later, do you think he was sort of bored?
Was he
Because
bored during the peacetime?
Yeah, given the let's go kind of thing.
Yes, there is a sort of very much an anticlimactic aspect to his peacetime premiership. I actually sum it up just in 1 chapter out of 32.
So tell me 5 books.
Because don't write if you're just interested in the 1950s, and that's what you think is important about Winston Churchill, certainly. He did achieve the things that he wanted to. He told a friend when he became Prime Minister for the 2nd time that he wanted, what he said was, houses, meat and not being scuppered, which meant he wanted to build 1 million council houses, which he did. He wanted to de-ration meat, which he also achieved. In fact, he de-rationed everything. And he didn't want the Labour Party to trip him up, which he also managed because the Conservatives then won the general election after that. So in his limited, in my view, ambitions for his second premiership, he did at least achieve them.
Thank you.
So.
During Churchill's life, the British Empire reached the zenith of its power and influence. And also during his life, it fell apart.
Yeah.
And partly he presided over it, obviously being prime minister twice. What were his thoughts on that?
Yes, he believed in the British Empire implicitly. He'd, as a young man, gone off to India to defend the British Empire. In 1942, he made a speech saying that he did not become the king, considered, because he had not managed to protect the British Empire, that he was actually a failure. And so he told his last private secretary, Anthony Montague Brown, a charming man who noted it down immediately, said it, that because he had not been able to... She was a tough woman. She was also an aristocrat, and she didn't put up with any... I mean, she didn't like any of his friends particularly, especially the ones that encouraged him to drink. And but she gave him, fell in love with friends who he would allow to take advantage of him. And she would not allow that at all. And she gave him very good advice, especially when he was rude to his secretaries, which he was on occasion. She brought him back into line. And also, there was a moment when he wanted to leave the trenches and go back into politics, and he said, she said that he absolutely had to stay there, and that churned her gut, because of course she was telling her husband that he needed to stay in the firing line of shells, 2 of which went through his dugout, and snipers' bullets which constantly came near him and killed people almost either side of him on one occasion. There's one, so it hurt her to have to give him this good political advice, but she knew that if he had wrecked his political career, by coming back too soon, he'd have always for the rest of his life been a shadow of himself. But that was another moment in the First World War that I didn't mention about his sense of personal destiny, was when he was called away by the general from his dugout in the front of the front line of the trenches, and he walked over 3 fields, and then the general didn't want to see him, and so he walked back over 3 enormous fields. It took him sort of half an hour to get back, and when he got back, he was told not to go into the dugout because a German whiz-bang, which is a name for a high explosive shell, had 5 minutes after he had left it gone inside, hit the dugout and decapitated everybody inside. And there was just so much blood inside that the sergeant wanted to keep him away from going back inside. So that's another example of this sense of the invisible wings keeping him ready for the time he was going to save his country. So.
Greatest discovery?
I think my greatest discovery was that Her Majesty the Queen allowed me to be the first Churchill biographer to use her father's diaries, King's diaries. And King George VI and Churchill met every Tuesday of the Second World War. And what Churchill told the King again and again was of his intense frustration and irritation, really, that the United States wasn't getting more involved in the conflict, because he saw it as a conflict for civilization and democracy. He saw that Adolf Hitler had to be stopped and exterminated, and that he didn't believe that the Roosevelt administration was doing enough to carry the burden that the rest of the world was carrying. So he couldn't say that in public, and never did, and he didn't actually say it in his memoirs either, because he was Prime Minister at the time, and President Eisenhower was President of America. And so you just get how frustrated he was by America. Gentleman man.
Was Churchill your idol, sir?
Was he what, sorry?
Your idol?
Mine? Yes. It's very difficult, you know, if you spend 4 years of your life, and in my case, actually on and off, sort of 30 years of your life, you're always research into it, you're always looking for feet of clay. And there are huge, I mean, Churchill did have huge feet of clay, and he did make mistake after mistake. But he kept coming back. You know, the ups and downs in his life are truly amazing. And so, although I have written about other people who I greatly admire, Napoleon, I wrote for 7 years, I wrote a big biography of Napoleon, which actually is longer than Napoleon spent on St. Helena and Elba put together in both of his exiles. And so I admired him, but when it comes to the sheer determination, there's a marvellous moment after the disastrous Munich Treaty, where in 1938, where in fact one of the things he had to do as a result of the Munich Treaty was cancel his trip to Texas. He was going to be coming to give a speech in Dallas. He had to cancel that. And he was brought up in front of his constituency, who were on the verge of sacking him as an MP, because he had constantly been attacking this treaty, the Munich Treaty, that Neville Chamberlain made with Adolf Hitler and gave away Czechoslovakia. And he was effectively told that if he would only change his mind and publicly recant on what he'd said, then he could continue being a Conservative member of Parliament. And he got up at the dinner at the end of this meeting and said that I've recently reread the speech I made on the 5th of October, i.e. the Munich speech, and I must say I agree with every word. And so he completely refused to back down. And the next day, the very next day, although he... Sorry, criticism of...
I'm sorry, the criticism of being a racist, being, you know, hating minorities, thinking the British were superior organizations.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes, man of his times, as it were.
Well, absolutely, but you're quite right. I mean, the things he said, and also I'm afraid the jokes that he made, were appallingly racist. And what you have to remember, of course, is that he was born at the same time that Darwin was still alive, when, I know this sounds completely ludicrous and obscene to us, but nonetheless, people thought that there was a hierarchy of races. And so it's the huge difference between his kind of racism and that of Adolf Hitler, the exterminationist form of racism, was that he believed that as a result of the privilege that he had, he owed more, he owed responsibility. With that power came extraordinary responsibility towards the native peoples of the empire. And therefore, they had to be protected and helped, and all the various things that the British Empire did for people was something that he was willing to dedicate his life to. But absolutely, unless you see him in the context of his own time, he comes over as a thoroughly unpleasant man.
As a historian, do you feel it's fair for later generations to apply your values to earlier generations?
I think it's, I call it chronological chauvinism, where we assume that for some reason that we're morally superior to everybody who ever lived before us, even though their entire zeitgeist, their whole world mindsets were created in a different way. And this horrible thing that we all realise as I say, disgusting, the idea of a hierarchy of races, was considered scientific fact at that time. And unless you can get your mind around that, you are never going to really have any respect for anybody ever who lived before the 1960s. So.
Do you feel that Churchill's military service created resentment against Germany even before World War II?
Did his, in the First World War, you mean? Yes, no, I don't. It's a good question. It's about whether or not he was just instinctively anti-German and therefore was anti-Hitler. That wasn't the case at all. He was anti-Hitler because he admired the Jews, he liked Jews, he got on well with them all his life, and so he had an early warning system about what Hitler and the Nazis were like. And he also had a great sense of history, and wrote history books, and so he could see the kind of threat that Adolf Hitler was posing in the context of the long continuum of threats against the attempts to hegemonize Europe that have been made again and again in over the past 500 years. So you have, in this sense, Churchill being the first person to see the dangers, and he was therefore, as a result, he was not just the first person, actually, he was, and the most eloquent person, but he was the most prominent person as well to do all that. And this did not come from any kind of hatred of the Germans. It came really from other intellectual and as he said, and as I think I might finish with, that extraordinary sense that all his past life really had been a preparation for that hour and that trial. Thank you very much, everybody.
Guys, grab a seat real quick. Thank you so much for coming out. What a great honor. What a great history lesson. What a great storyteller. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tom Bloomer. I'm the proud principal here at Churchill High School. But I want to bring up somebody that has led Churchill High School for almost 10 years. And Mr. Joe Reasons is a huge history buff himself, and he has a gift that he'd like to present to Mr. Roberts, and maybe talk a little bit about it, because it's got some neat historical significance to it also, I'll say.
Yes, first let me say, in my official capacity today, I need to express the regrets. Superintendent Dr. Gotard could not be here today. He is on his way to Austin, and so he asked me to express that to you as well. In my unofficial capacity, I usually, when I come up, have to say, I'm not Winston Churchill. As a matter of fact, right down the corner there is a conference room that I used to call the Churchill room. And there is a picture hanging in there that used to hang in my office. And students kept coming in and they would kind of stare at me. And finally, one of them said, Ms. Reasons, why do you have a picture of yourself? And I said, get that picture out of my office. But just as a bit of trivia, do you know what Winston Churchill's favorite pens were?
His pens?
Pens, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. And I have a reason for asking that. That's kind of my special interest that I developed at a very early age. His favorite pens were either the Onoto, which is still made today, or the Conway Stewart, which is still made today. His family used the Parker 51, which is not made anymore as the Parker 51. But the reason I tell you that is that on behalf of the district, on behalf of Churchill High School, we want you to have this, and there is something inside called the Churchill that we would like you to have.
Thank you very much indeed. What a great, can I open it now? I love
Sure.
presents. How wonderful. So this is a okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some ink, we've got a rather beautiful leather-bound book, and we also have two gorgeous fountain pens. I'm going to hold them up and show you. How fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
So one more last token in military tradition. We have a coin for the school that we would like to offer each of you. Winston Churchill High School JROTC coin. I hope you had it. Your fantastic collection.
Thank you very much. Indeed. Fantastic. That is.
Thank you so
much.
Fantastic. Thank you. There we go. That's it.
Journalism director here, and my grandson's in the junior ROTC. I'd just like to address it to my daughter, Michael, M-I-K-E-L.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I read one of the first lines in the intro about you got drunk last night at the French Embassy, a little drunker than usual. That hooked me.
Well, I just want to say thank you. We're certainly enjoyed it very much. My granddaughter was one of your escorts today.
Oh, really?
And so I would like to, you autographed a book for her. I'd like one for me. And
Great.
that was, my name is Clinton, Q-U-N-T-O-N.
Q-U-I.
Quinton.
Right, yeah.
And today's date would be great, and there's nothing special that you